What's up, guys? Okay, so I've been getting a lot of questions on what I specifically look for when I'm creating my watch list and, how I determine if I think a stock is going to break out or not. Keep in mind that nothing is set in stone, so nothing is going to work 100% of the time, guys, and this is just my opinion on, what I specifically look for. But with all that being said, here is how I search for breakouts. Okay, so when I'm looking for stocks and trying to find stocks that may break out at the open, what I really want to see is I want to see a little bit of movement in after hours and pre-market. Still, what I really don't want to see is an overextended pre-market or after hours move. You can look here on APVO. This thing gapped up from the $40s all the way to $3.11. Now that's just a huge overextended gap up. When I see stocks that have gapped up that much, I really do not think they will eventually push back up, simply because they're so overextended. If you think about the psychology behind it, anybody that held this stock overnight, they're going to want to bank profits at the open. If they bank it in after hours or pre-market, they're going to take a big hit on the spread and they're going to lose money. And so what they're going to do is they're going to wait for the open and then sell. And so that's why you see here APO opens up and it sells off. Now I will say this about APVO, this thing consolidated pretty well actually. It didn't drop too much compared to how much it broke out. And now it did drop an entire dollar, but it didn't fill the gap all the way back down, which I like to see. And so I'm actually going to be paying attention to this one on Tuesday morning at the open to see if this thing can try to push back up to that $3 range. But simply because this thing gapped up so much, I just don't like it. It's just too overextended for a gap up. What I really, really like to see is when a stock, it doesn't gap up too much, but it shows high volume relative to what it's done in the past. If you look here on PYDS, now it had some decent volume here. But I'm talking about on Thursday of last week. See, it didn't move at all. It had very low volume all that previous week. And then it gapped up a decent amount and had high volume relative to what it's had in the past. If you look here all the way through this week here, it didn't have any movement in after hours and pre-market. Now here it might not seem like a big move in after hours and pre-market, but this thing actually gapped up 10 cents, which is way more than it ever did in the past. That's really what I like to see. I don't want to see a really overextended gap up like APVO. I just want to see a little bit of movement that lets me know that some people are buying it. It's not overextended, and so I'm not worried about people taking profits in the morning, but just this little minor gap up here with a little bit more volume than it's used to can give way to these big breakout plays. You can see once this thing did open up on Thursday, it broke out from $1.70 all the way to the $2.35 area. Now that's a big move, and you can see here it didn't show any volume the previous week. That's really what I like to see. And so it's really important not to get your hopes up too much about big gaps, because a lot of times what happens is those buyers are going to sell off at the open and bank their profits, and it's just going to start a squeeze, and that thing is going to end up crashing down a large majority of the time. Now, like I said, with PYDS, this thing didn't gap up huge, but it gapped up enough for people to pay attention to it on Thursday morning at the open, and thus this thing pushed up a big way. Okay, and so another thing I want to see on a stock that's broken out previously and ran a little bit in the previous days is I want to see some consolidation, and I want to see it hold some of those gains. Now, a lot of times it's not going to hold all of those gains, and it's going to drop down some, obviously, but I want to see it hold, a decent amount of those gains. If you can see here, a few weeks ago on ABIL, it made this little mini breakout here, moving up to 78 cents, and then it held those gains for the most part. It didn't fall all the way back down to where it was previously at about 60 cents. It held some of those gains. Then the next day it did the same thing. It broke out again, and it held those gains for the most part and kind of formed a little mini channel here. If a stock gaps up all the way and then falls all the way back down, or if it breaks out and then falls all the way back down to where it previously was, that's a really bad sign that this thing is not going to keep moving. But when a stock breaks out and holds those gains, like you can see here on ABIL, I like that a lot. Now, eventually this thing did crash back down, simply because it had already broken out 3 days in a row, and eventually it's going to wash out, especially with cheap penny stocks. And so anything after the third flag or the third breakout on the third day is usually a lot less reliable in my opinion. I usually try to stay away from those and only trade either hopefully the first day breakout if I can catch it and the second day breakout. Now I'm not saying it won't break out on the third day, because you can see here it did push up on the third day, but it is a lot less reliable, and anything after the third day is really playing with fire here. But like I said, I want to see it consolidate. I want to see it break out, hold those gains, break out, hold those gains for the most part, and continue to hold those gains. That's really what I like to see. If the stock breaks out and then washes all the way back down, I won't even pay attention to it anymore, just because those stocks breaking out after they've washed all the way back down are usually a lot less reliable, and they're much more risky, and for those reasons I usually try to stay away from it. But the biggest thing to take here is you want to see the stock hold any gains it makes. That's usually a good indicator of if it's going to have the chance to break out in the upcoming days, and so that's definitely something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Okay, and so another thing that I look for is when a stock has a strong end of the day. You can see here on FALC on Friday of this week, it started to push up towards the end of the day, and it ended right around the high of the day. That's usually a pretty good indicator that this stock is going to move a little bit in after hours and pre-market, and hopefully it's going to move up the next morning. So that's another thing that I watch for. I've been swing trading a little bit on Robinhood, and one of my strategies with swing trading is I try to get into a stock if it makes this big push at the end of the day and it closes around that high of day. So you can see here FALC this day pushed all the way up to the 25-cent area high of the day, and it pushed up in after hours and pre-market, and then it made this big breakout the next morning. So that's one thing that I like to trade. That's one strategy I like to trade for my swing trades, is I like to see a stock that, even if it has low volume at the beginning of the day, if it makes a big push towards the end of the day and ends towards its high, then it's usually a pretty good indicator that the stock may push up the next morning. Now, nothing with trading is ever set in stone. Nothing works 100% of the time, but this is usually one thing that I consider relatively reliable, is when a stock ends up pushing up towards the end of the day, makes that power hour move, pushing up and closes around that high. That's usually a good indicator of the stock possibly making a big breakout pay in the morning. And it's been relatively profitable for me on Robinhood. Granted, my Robinhood account's only $200, but I originally started out with only $50 or $100, and so I've got it up a decent amount swing trading this way, and that's definitely something I pay attention to and use as a strategy. Again, I just wait for the stock to see if it's going to make this end of the day push, and if it closes around that high, that's usually a good indicator, and a lot of other traders are always watching that as well, for them to get in after hours and pre-market and help the stock gap up a little bit. And so with all those being said, I hope everyone liked this video. I'm just trying to go over, what I really look for when, looking for stocks the next morning for my watch list, aside from just scanning stocks and stuff like that. There's a few things I pay attention to, and so I decided to go over them in this video, and I hope they were helpful and educational for all you new traders like me. Anyways, guys, that is the end of this video. If you want to keep watching more videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. It does a lot to help support this channel. Also, drop a comment and the comment section if you have any questions for me, and come check out our free day trading chat room. I post a link in each video's description. Anyways, guys, good luck on Tuesday, and thanks for watching.